Thanks for joining us on KHOU 11 Plus. I'm Ugochi Iloka. Did you know nearly 3 million people in the U.S. have epilepsy, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention? Flashing lights leading to seizures. This is what so many think of when discussing the subject. However, I spoke to one woman who discovered her epilepsy in a different way.
Is that up? Come on, Laura.
Does that hurt, honey?
Laura Snyder never thought in a million years she'd have to learn how to walk and talk again.
I want you to bring your leg forward more quickly.
In August of 2016, while living in Chicago, Laura's life completely changed. And the first sign was when her speech slurred during a phone call with her mom.
They tested me for lupus. They tried multiple sclerosis. They did not know what was happening.
Eventually, they found out it was epilepsy, and she could no longer do things like walk or drive on her own or swim solo. Laura moved back to Houston and started working with Dr. Jay Gavala, an associate professor at UT Health Houston's neurology department.
Epilepsy is just abnormal electrical activity in the brain that is occurring and producing a variety of clinical symptoms.
Laura says Dr. Gavala studied under the doctor who was originally treating her in Chicago and found out her symptoms were nothing like the stereotypes often linked to epilepsy.
They're falling on the floor and they're shaking. And that's what, when you tell someone, I have epilepsy, that's what they imagine. And their eyes get big.
There is a small subset of individuals who have seizures where flashing lights can result in a seizure, but the vast majority, especially in my population, don't tend to have that as their trigger.
Screenings for epilepsy are done in exam rooms similar to this one. Dr. Gavala says that many times epilepsy can go undiagnosed due to symptoms going undetected.
There can be subtle symptoms such as staring off into space, anxiety attacks, twitching of different parts of the body, language difficulties. So that is a big part of why people don't get diagnosed early and recognize that they're actually having seizures.
Both Laura and Dr. Gavala now work with the Epilepsy Foundation, Texas.
What do you say to people to get them to understand that their support helps the foundation?
Even a small donation helps a family that can send their child to go to a camp or a clinic to get help or understanding of what they're going through.
Laura is on the Texas Epilepsy Foundation board, and Dr. Gavala is the chairperson of the Professional Advisory Board.
The Epilepsy Foundation has been a natural ally for me in my clinical care. So they are helpful in terms of spreading community knowledge and awareness of epilepsy.
When people sign up for the Texas Epilepsy Walk Houston, they are supporting epilepsy research, treatment plans, and giving hope to survivors like Laura. Yeah, Laura's story is incredible. I mean, she has been through so much. You can see her all smiles today. And now she wants to help others who are like her. So now we're going to continue this conversation around epilepsy, sorting out the realities surrounding the condition, as well as just really hearing from some experts and guests here. We'll start with Dr. Atul Mashawari. Dr. Atul, thank you so much for being here today. He's really going to break down exactly the symptoms and other questions we have. He is a physician at the Baylor College of Medicine. And then we have Melanie Hamlet here, and a board member from the Epilepsy Foundation, Texas, who is also living with epilepsy. Thank you all for being here bright and early this morning. You've got your purple on.
Yes.
You know, that's our color. See, we understood the assignment. But before we get started, of course, we want you to know that we are going to take your questions about epilepsy live during our panel. So you can text your questions to 713-526-1111, and we'll go ahead and get started. So first, we're going to start off really talking about what is epilepsy and why is it, do we have an important conversation about it in our community? Can we talk about, start with you, Dr. Atul. Can we talk about what epilepsy is, and when we talk about the importance of people in the community knowing about it, I just feel like there's so many stereotypes and symptoms that people maybe are not aware of that can be subtle. Can you share a little more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I think there is a lot of misconceptions sometimes about what epilepsy can be. And that's because epilepsy is not just one disease. It's actually many different types of diseases that all have one thing in common, and that is that patients can have recurrent seizures, so seizures that come out of the blue that, unless treated, may continue. And oftentimes people think about shaking all over, generalized convulsions, but that's only one type of seizure. There are also different types of seizures that can come from different parts of the brain, and so that can present with staring spells, episodes of confusion, difficulty with speaking like we saw, and all of those can be potential seizures. And the complicated part is there are other things that can mimic seizures as well. And so anytime you might have a concern that a part of the brain is not working temporarily, it's a good idea to get help.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you feel something's off, right, double check. And, you know, Melanie, you are living with epilepsy and you're a part of the Epilepsy Foundation here in Texas, you know, just very involved. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to join the cause?
So for me, I had my first seizure at 13. And just like the doctor said, when they first started, it looked like I was staring off into space, repeating a repetitive motion. And so it took a year for me to get my epilepsy diagnosis because it didn't present with the traditional falling down, shaking all over. And so because of that, we all know being a teenager is very difficult as it is. So imagine being a 13-year-old girl and now also having seizures. And so eventually after I got my diagnosis of epilepsy, someone told us about the Epilepsy Foundation of Texas and got connected. And for me, it was a true lifeline to help me navigate epilepsy. They had medical resources for us. I got very involved in their camping programs. And for me, it really helped with confidence. When I was 15, I started going to Camp Kaleidoscope, and I got to meet other students and other kids with epilepsy and really got to see, no, this is okay. I can still have an okay life. I can still do things. But it also let me build community. So I had someone I can talk to after a bad day or switching medicine and it made me feel weird. I had someone to talk to. I was able to make friends. Someone that identified with me. And so that was very helpful for me as a teenager. And so since then, I've always wanted to give back to the foundation. I've participated in many of their programs over the year. And now I'm honored to be serving on their board of directors to help keeping this mission moving forward.
It sounds like connection is key to when
Yes.
it comes to just getting through it all. It's huge. And so, you know, Dr. Mashari, if you could also talk to us about your research regarding epilepsy and just your background with it, the patients you deal with, if you could share some more about that.
Sure, absolutely. I think there's so much that we still have to learn about epilepsy, and I think a lot of times there's a lot of stigma around having a diagnosis of epilepsy. And my research in particular, I'm interested in understanding why some patients don't respond to medications. We know that 1 out of 3 patients will not respond to medications no matter how many medications you try. And we don't really understand what the underlying mechanism is for that. And so that's part of what I'm interested in researching. The other part is understanding why patients with epilepsy have more than just seizures. They can have memory difficulty, they can have difficulty with paying attention, and sometimes that's due to the underlying disease itself. Sometimes it's due to medications, sometimes it's due to other diagnoses that often come alongside epilepsy. And so trying to understand why that happens and how we can best treat that is what I'm most interested in.
It's interesting you said that because Laura Snyder, who was the young woman in my story there, she talked about like some of the medications not working. She had to try several to finally get to a place where, you know, she's a little stable, but they're still trying to figure it out. So that research will be very monumental, of course, when you guys figure out how else you can help. So I just want to remind everyone to take a moment to text any questions you have about epilepsy to 713-526-1111. Again, we'll be answering your questions during our panel. Now, Dr. Mashari, for someone who may suspect they or their loved one could have epilepsy, what are some other early signs that they can look out for, and what exactly should they do? I know you mentioned a couple before, but is it just immediately you're going to a doctor's, or are there other things they can do to kind of detect, hey, is this something I could have?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think the biggest thing is that epilepsy because it's recurrent seizures that are coming unpredictably, they can often be very brief, and in between seizures, patients can feel completely normal, and that might make them feel like, oh, everything's okay, I don't need to seek help. But it's that intermittent, brief feeling like something is off that should raise an alarm bell. And oftentimes, patients don't realize it. They might be, for example, staring off and then coming back and not even realizing that something happened. And so having clues from others around you, your loved ones, saying that, hey, you were confused for a minute or two, is everything okay? That's a sign that you should seek help. And then there are definitely studies that can help you determine if it's seizures or if it's something else that could be going on. So we do testing like MRI scans of the brain and EEG studies to look at the brain waves to help us understand, is this epilepsy or is this something else that could be causing your symptoms?
Yeah. And Melanie, you mentioned you didn't deal with the traditional, I guess, stereotypical symptoms of epilepsy. Once you did get, I guess, on certain medication, I'm assuming, did you notice some of those symptoms, I don't want to say disappearing, but subsiding a bit? Can you share with us how it helps you?
Yeah, so for me, I was kind of one of the 1 in 3 where medication didn't really help me a lot. It did help. I learned there were other lifestyle things that I could do. One of the things I really noticed was over the years as a teenager was my menstrual cycle kind of played a part into it. So there were certain points in my cycle I would seem to be more likely to have seizures. And so there were other things that we could, of course, you can do to control your cycle, like take birth control along with the seizure medicines, and those did help. But for me, it was just a lot of lifestyle things, getting lots of sleep, making sure I stayed hydrated. Any stress you put on your body increases your likelihood of having a seizure. So anything I could do to keep myself healthy really helped me control my seizures. But for me, really over the years, like my mom likes to say, as I entered puberty, my seizures started, and then as I left puberty, my seizures rapidly decreased, which can happen sometimes for people. You never know why that's happening. But a lot of the medication, while it does help, it has sometimes have other side effects. So it could make me not focus as much or different things like that, which can also, like as you're having seizures, you're already having sometimes concentration issues, headaches. So it's just a balance of what's going to be the right medicine for me to help stop my seizures, but also not give me so many side effects that I can't function.
Yeah.
It's
finding
just,
that balance.
Yeah, finding the balance.
Yeah. Dr. O'Toole, when we talk about epilepsy, what is it? I don't want to say what is the average epilepsy patient looks like, because it could vary, but in terms of, could it be a genetic thing, run in your family, something triggering? As Melanie mentioned, how do you know if this is something that could develop later? I know Laura mentioned this developed well into her career. She played soccer, she swam, she was in college, and then later it hit her life.
Yeah, it's a great question. Everyone with epilepsy is unique. It has a unique story. Most of the time, you can't tell just by looking at someone that they might have a diagnosis. And that's because, as I mentioned before, it's a wide spectrum of diseases rather than one disease itself. And the most common causes are either genetic in origin or having some kind of structural abnormality or a location in the brain that is the focus for the seizures. And sometimes it's a combination of both. And it's really doing these investigations like the MRI, the EEG. Sometimes there are other tests that can supplement that can help us get to the bottom of what's causing the epilepsy. And based on the underlying diagnosis, there are different treatments that are available.
Yeah. And there are a lot of misconceptions about epilepsy. Can you go into some of the stereotypes? I mean, we've seen a lot of drama on TV about it, falling over, different things, but it's not the case for everybody.
That's correct, yes. And so one of the misconceptions is that patients have control over their seizures. They can, if they just think hard enough or try hard enough, they can stop their seizures. But we know the vast majority of epilepsy patients do not have control. It's completely unpredictable. And it's something that we work together to find the best treatments. Another misconception is that if medications don't work, there's nothing you can do. And I think one of the things that a lot of patients don't realize is that if you're in that category, that 1 out of 3 patients that doesn't respond to the medications, then it's at that point it's very important that you get evaluated by an epilepsy specialist and potentially get referred to an epilepsy monitoring unit where you can have your seizures characterized so that you can get to the bottom, is this epilepsy number one? And then if it is there a potential alternative therapy outside of medications? Because we're getting a lot of exciting new opportunities through surgery and neuromodulation devices that can help control epilepsy that are making seizures easier to control than ever before.
There's been some progress there
Yes,
to manage
absolutely.
it, which is good news. Melanie, I can't imagine, what you've gone through to get to a point where you feel good, you feel normal, but I'm sure there were a lot of challenges, especially when you first found out so young. Can you talk to us about those challenges and how you were able to overcome them?
For me, it was my mom being very strong and pushing me to move forward. Two, education helped me a lot. So getting connected with the Epilepsy Foundation, learning more about epilepsy, learning things that helped me were like learning some of the statistics. Like 1 in 26 people will be diagnosed with epilepsy at some point in their lifetime. So I'm just one of 26. 1 in 10 people will have a seizure at some point in their lifetime. And then at any given moment, 1 in 100 people on this earth currently has epilepsy. So for me, that put it in a little bit of perspective of, while it may seem like I'm alone, I'm not. And then the connection of the community. So there were friends I made at epilepsy camp. Once when I was 16, I experienced something called status epilepticus. It's a seizure that will not stop. Had to be rushed to the hospital. My mom called, and his name was Mario. Hi, Mario, if you're out there, if you remember me. But my mom called his mom, and his mom, Mario, his dad, came to the hospital to be with my mom.
Wow.
But we made that connection through Camp Kaleidoscope, and so even my mom had additional resources that she could reach out to.
Yes.
Parents that were experiencing it. And so that was very helpful to her, which also helped me. So just really educating myself on seizures, educating the community, because another thing too, being a teenager, you're in high school, you're randomly having seizures. So for me, it was educating my friends, educating the teachers, educating the school to destigmatize it and make it less scary. I find people are terrified of things they don't understand, and so by the education, not only to myself to make it less scary to me, but make it less scary to my peers, it made it easier for everyone. So then everyone knew, okay, she's having a seizure now, but she's going to be okay. Here are some rules that you have to take medical attention for if it gets to that point, but if it doesn't, she's going to be fine. But just the education of that, and for me, the support of the Epilepsy Foundation really helping to empower me to do that, really helped, I could say, just the day-to-day living with epilepsy easier.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about educating people. A lot of people don't know this, but I remember in college, one of my sorority sisters, she just flat out had a seizure in one of the parties, the Halloween party we were at, and I remember being so terrified, and honestly it made things worse. And she educated me. She actually has epilepsy. She educated me that day, and I remember just apologizing just because of that reaction. And then there was another time she had it again, and we just knew how to support her because of that education. So yeah, that's where it starts. And so I think it's really important that we're having this panel so people learn about it and know how to respond to folks who have it. Yeah, so we do have a viewer question coming in now. This person says, I've had 2 seizures in the past 10 years, and they said it was stress induced. I've had 1 in years, but I have terrible anxiety, and it's hard for me to communicate sometimes. Is that anxiety disorder itself, or epilepsy symptoms? Can it be, Dr. Mashari?
That's such a great question. I think that speaks to what we mentioned earlier, that epilepsy can have a lot of mimics. There are a lot of things that can look like epilepsy, and it's really important when you're having any symptoms that are concerning, that are interrupting your day-to-day activities, that you're seeking help and trying to get to the bottom of what could be causing it. There are different types of disease processes that manifest in similar ways. You can have feelings of anxiety that can mimic seizures, and seizures can cause you to feel anxious as well. And so doing the appropriate testing, oftentimes coming to an epilepsy monitoring unit to get that gold standard diagnosis can be helpful to differentiate.
So starting with going to an epilepsy monitoring unit, like at a hospital, to see for sure would be a good step.
I would say that not everybody is a good candidate for being evaluated in an epilepsy monitoring unit.
Okay.
In this case, since it wasn't happening very frequently, it's unlikely that that would be captured in an epilepsy monitoring unit. So I would say starting with your primary doctor, seeing if a referral to a neurologist or an epileptologist, someone who specializes in epilepsy, would be appropriate, and then they can refer you to an epilepsy monitoring unit if it's appropriate.
Got it. Well, we've got people tuning in, y'all, so we have another question from a person who's asking this. How do seizures affect daily life, and can I live a normal life, or does it depend really on the type of seizures I have?
I will say for me, I feel I led a very normal life. The only thing I would say seizures really stopped me from doing was probably learning how to drive at 16. So when everyone else was out learning how to drive, that wasn't an option for me. It's just not safe to drive when you're having epilepsy. But outside of that, I dated, I got married, I got divorced, I have a job that I love, I have friends, I have family, I travel a lot. I've gotten 3 stamps on my passport this year, so I feel I live a very normal, full life. I would just say it's kind of what you make it. And for me, part of that is the support that Epilepsy Foundation had for me to kind of let me know, yes, you can travel, you can get a job, you can go to school, you can do all of these things with the support of them, and then seeing the mirrors of other people I got connected with epilepsy through the foundation, seeing them live normal lives kind of let me know, okay, this will be okay. It's just can be a little overwhelming at the time, but the support of additional people really let you know you can go out and do everything that you wanted to do, even with epilepsy.
It is about the community. And we have a question coming in for you again, Melanie. Were you initially misdiagnosed? If so, how did you combat that? Do you remember?
I do remember.
Okay.
So the first seizure I ever had, I just felt off the entire day. And eventually, what everyone said, I passed out. They called an ambulance, the ambulance gets there, taken to the hospital. They said I had low blood sugar. And so initially I was just told I had low blood sugar, I was fainting due to low blood sugar. But I felt off that whole day, so I didn't eat. So my blood sugar was low. Then when it happened again a few weeks later, again, same sort of thing. And that's when, to your point, I kind of was misdiagnosed because then they were trying to feed me juice or bananas because they're thinking my blood sugar is low. But because I'm actively having a seizure, that's actually quite dangerous because I could choke or aspirate on it. So that's why it took about a year. It honestly was a nurse. We had went to the emergency room, and I was, at that point, the partial complex seizure I was having generalized, meaning I was shaking all over. And a nurse said, you know what? I think she has epilepsy. And it was a nurse in an ER that originally said that. We got the neuroconsult there, and they recommended me to go see a neurologist, and that's what ultimately led to my diagnosis. But it took a while because my seizures didn't present as falling down and shaking. I would have an aura, the feeling I get right before my seizure, and that's why sometimes people can confuse it with anxiety, because for me it was an extreme sense of fear. I would get so scared that I couldn't talk, and that was like my aura, or the feeling I would get before my seizure. And then once the seizure would happen, I'm unconscious, I don't remember, so I'm relying on what people are saying that I'm doing to communicate to the doctor. But I did have a few instances where I did fall down and shake, but it wasn't until I presented with a very traditional seizure that people are used to that led me to get to my diagnosis, and it still took almost a year.
Dr. Toole, why does it always take so long for them to diagnose this? Laura Snyder, the woman in our story, said the same thing. They just couldn't figure it out. And is there medical research or breakthroughs that are being done, that have been done to help perhaps catch it a lot sooner? I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it goes back to the fact that epilepsy is so many different things. It can be so many different diseases have so many different causes that it manifests in different ways, and it can mimic other types of disease. It can look like a transient stroke, for example, or a transient ischemic attack, mini stroke. It can look like an anxiety attack, for example, and it goes both ways. There are people who don't get diagnosed with epilepsy for quite some time because the symptoms aren't classic. And then there's also the opposite, where patients are inappropriately diagnosed with epilepsy, and then it's only after certain investigations that it's realized that it's something else that they have. So I'd say I think it's really helpful. I think hopefully something that comes from this panel is that people realize and recognize that if something doesn't make sense, something doesn't add up, you're not responding to the treatment that you were initially given, that you should be asking your healthcare provider, is there something else that could be going on?
Yeah. Again, you all can text the number right there, 713-526-1111. If you have any questions, we are answering them live here during this panel, hoping to get you that information. Now, we did want to touch base. Do you know if there's been any recent breakthroughs or research, I guess, to help with curing epilepsy or just making it better for folks to live with? And how does the foundation connect with that? How do they help support that research?
Sure. Happy to talk about that. I think this is a very exciting time to be in the world of epilepsy research. There's a lot going on. I'd say the two biggest areas are within the area of genetics and within the area of technology. Within genetics, we're learning more and more how certain genetic mutations can result in epilepsy, and addressing those at the genetic level, especially for children with epilepsy, is starting to become a new and emerging opportunity. And then even adults with epilepsy who may not recognize that they have a genetic contribution, doing genetic testing can sometimes be helpful to help direct the type of therapy that you're getting. That used to be something that we never did, and now it's becoming more and more common that we're getting genetic testing. And then in terms of technology, there are a lot of breakthroughs with the different devices that are available. So especially if you're finding that medication is not working for you, then being referred to an epilepsy specialist to see if you might be a good candidate for either deep brain stimulation or responsive neurostimulation. These are the two most common approaches, in addition to vagus nerve stimulation, which is an older therapy that's also available, that can help keep seizures under better control.
And Melanie, how does the Epilepsy Foundation Texas actually help support clinical research?
So when I was first navigating my diagnosis, they really helped me get connected to doctors. So like helping me find a neurologist that they knew were familiar enough with epilepsy, an epileptologist, which is ultimately where I landed. They're really good at helping you find the connection to the medical resources that you need. They were also really good about, they have telemedicine clinics, so there's different clinics and different things they have to help people directly get support they need. There's support for medication, so if people need help getting their medicine, we all know healthcare costs can be really expensive, so they do support helping people get medicine, which is really important. But for me, I would say that's the biggest connection that they have, is helping people that have the epilepsy diagnosis find really good healthcare providers that can assist them when and if they need it.
You know, when we talk about the impact of this foundation, how it helps so many people, how important is it that people support it through walks and other things? You mentioned the camps that helped you. How important is it that they step up? Because it sounds like without community support, it'd be hard to keep it going.
Yeah, so for me, I was a camper for 3 years. And that's expensive. It's expensive to send a child to camp. And so the programs that they have around that, all of those things cost money. And so any support that anyone can give to help support the camping programs. The walk is really big around education. So it's big around educating the communities that we have. We're going to have a great day on this Saturday, the 26th, at the Houston Zoo. Really excited for it. But it's really about educating and community support. Again, I've talked a lot about how the Epilepsy Foundation was big for me in the community aspect. I was able to make friends. My mom was able to have additional resources. They even sent someone out to my high school to do like a seizure first aid with teachers when I first started. So all of those different types of things that they do are really important for people just like me that are just trying to navigate epilepsy. but the support of the organization, so the funds that we can drive to them will continue to help people like me, because I truly believe the person I am today, I owe in part to the Epilepsy Foundation, because I saw myself losing confidence and losing things because I was so scared to be out in the world. Yeah. But between my family support and the Epilepsy Foundation, I was able to see, no, I can live a normal life. I can go to college. I can get a job. I can travel. I can do anything I want to do, because they empower you to do so. They let you know, like, hey, you don't have any barriers. It may look different for you, so it may not look like the traditional path that your friends are going on, but you can still do them, and here are the tools you need to navigate that so you can do what you want to do.
Wow, that's incredible how it supports so many people just as yourself. So it's important that people support them too. Now we do have another viewer question coming in. This person is asking if there are any dietary changes that can be made to manage epilepsy. Doctor, if you want to chime in, and then Melanie, you mentioned you made some changes, so you can answer after him too.
Sure. There's been a lot of research into whether or not there's specific changes to diet that might be able to help patients with epilepsy. And for the most part, most patients don't see a significant change in their seizures with changes to their diet. Where there has been a lot of research, people may have heard of the ketogenic diet, and that's a very, very low carbohydrate intake. And there are certain patients that may benefit from that diet change, and that's something to talk with your doctor about. It's very hard to adhere to that consistently, but if done according to the rules regularly, then it can reduce seizure frequency. It rarely causes seizure freedom. There's certain genetic types of epilepsy where it does lead to seizure freedom, but for the most part, it reduces seizure frequency, but by itself won't cure epilepsy.
Gotcha. Melanie, did you make eating changes?
Yeah,
Did it help?
for me, I quickly learned in college, you're trying to stay up, cram, study for exams. For me, caffeine, I can't do too much caffeine. One, I need the sleep. And two, if anything that overstresses my body, I feel can increase my likelihood of having a seizure. So for me, I cut down on caffeine. Even to this day, I don't have more than 1 cup of coffee and before noon, just to make sure I can get a full night's sleep. And two, just other things, so anything that's not going to stress your body out, like having too much alcohol, having a really bad hangover the next day. While I'm not saying I've had a seizure every time I've had a bad hangover, I've noticed it doesn't do well with my medicine. It doesn't make me feel good. It stresses my body out. Anything that stresses my body out can increase my likelihood of having a seizure. So it's things like that. The healthier I can make myself, the less likelihood you have of having a seizure.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Doing your part. Another person is asking, what are the options if the medication doesn't work, doctor?
Yeah, important question. This can be very challenging because there are over 20 different medications for seizures. And so oftentimes you may feel comforted that if one medication isn't working, maybe I can just move to another medication. But that is a dangerous strategy to rely solely on that because you might feel like, okay, the 4th medication doesn't work, maybe I'll try the 5th medication. But the research shows that after failing 2 seizure medications at appropriate doses due to lack of efficacy, it's just not working for you, that's when you really should be referred to an epilepsy specialist and consider getting monitored in an epilepsy monitoring unit to really understand, is this epilepsy or is it something that's mimicking it, for which medications for seizures aren't appropriate, or is this something that is truly epilepsy. In that case, if medications aren't working, that's when we start thinking about alternative therapies like surgery.
Yeah, and Dr. Toole, we had another question from someone watching right now. They said, how effective are medications and do they have side effects they should be concerned about? Yeah,
that's a great question. And that's something that we always have to take into account is not just are we helping get the seizures under control, but is it turning you into a zombie and you're not able to function? That can be just as bad as the seizures themselves. So about 50% of patients will respond to the first seizure medication. So half of patients will become seizure-free with just 1 seizure medication. So that can be very effective for a lot of patients. And then another medication on top of that may get another 20% of patients under control. After that, any additional seizure medication may reduce the frequency of seizures, but it's less and less likely that you'll become seizure-free. In terms of the side effects,
right.
the most common are drowsiness, dizziness, or a rash. And those are common ones to look out for, in which case you want to talk to your seizure doctor about whether or not there are alternatives that can help prevent that from happening in the future. But it is a balance, and our goals are always no seizures, no side effects, with the least amount of medication possible.
Yeah, and I guess you won't know till you actually try it out. So, Melanie, we have another viewer question coming in for you as well, and they want to know, how has living with epilepsy changed the way you see yourself or your purpose in life?
Ooh,
good
I
one.
will tell you, I will tell you, I pretty much know I can do anything. I know I can get up and do anything. There's one moment that I remember this. I woke up one day, I was probably 16 or so, felt a little off, kind of felt like I might have a seizure, just felt off, and my mom, she's a mom. She had 3 kids, she's trying to get us all to do stuff, and she was like, I need you to get up and go to school today. Like, she's like, I have stuff to do today. So I did. I got on the school bus, had a seizure on the school bus. So, I eventually, I get to school, rest a little bit, continue with my day. But my mom, that morning, even though I felt like I wasn't going to feel well, I felt like it wasn't going to be a good day, my mom encouraging me to get up, keep going, keep pushing. And now I know, like, okay, it doesn't matter what happens. I can have a seizure in the middle of the day. I will get up, dust myself off, take a rest, get some water, take a nap, do what I need to do, and keep going. I don't have to stop. And so I would say that's probably the biggest thing epilepsy taught me was resilience. I know I can just keep going on because this one thing is not going to stop me. And two, you really can kind of do anything. Like everyone has their thing. People have diabetes, epilepsy, no matter what it is, everyone has something. And so this is just kind of my thing. And so I figure out how to navigate my thing and keep moving forward with life. To not let it stop me is probably my biggest thing. It's just to keep going.
Yeah, really great advice. And you all can keep the questions coming. We have a few minutes left in our panel discussion here. The number's on your screen. Text us at 713-526-1111. And Melanie, another one for you. What's one thing you wish people would stop assuming or saying when they find out you have epilepsy? I'm sure that gets frustrating at times.
I think it goes back to the lack of education. I think people fear what they don't know. And so I would just say, if you see someone have a seizure, you see someone doing something that's different than you, don't make assumptions, right? Don't assume, oh, she's contagious. Don't assume, oh, she's not smart. Don't make any assumptions. Ask me. Come up and ask me the question. Hey, I saw you had an issue yesterday. Are you okay? What was that? Instead of just assuming, oh, I don't want to go by her. I'm going to get what she has, or think I can't do something like, oh, I don't want to stress her out, or she could have a seizure doing it. She can mess it up. Give me the option, give me the chance, let me decide on what I can and can't do, which there's not a lot I can't do, I'm gonna tell you that right now, but just what I can do. And so don't make the assumption, ask the question. Because it is very scary, I get it, especially I can remember being in high school, having a seizure the first week of school. I mean, it's scary. And so kids, people assume things, but after you ask the question and understand, so instead of going into something you don't know with fear, going into something you don't know with curiosity to understand would probably be my biggest ask of people.
That's right.
Is just don't make the assumption that just because this person is having a seizure or their brain works a little differently than yours, they can't do something that you feel that they should be able to do, or whatever. Just don't assume.
Don't assume. That's the biggest message there. And Dr. Toole, we have another viewer. They're asking you, do you think it's important to utilize 7 Tesla MRI tech if there are other MRIs are really not showing anything, and why?
Yeah, what a great question. As our technology is improving, we do need to ask ourselves, is it something that's worth the extra cost and extra time to do these tests? The standard MRI these days is a 3 Tesla MRI, and there are certain places where you can get higher resolution with a 7 Tesla MRI. And I would say in certain cases it can be helpful, but for the most part it often doesn't show anything different than the 3 Tesla MRI showed. Okay. So I would say that it's something to talk about with your doctor and see if it's something that's right for you, and in certain cases it can be helpful.
Got it. And here's another question for you, Dr. O'Toole. Now, this woman says her granddaughter has seizures and she has hydrocephalus and she says, she's trying to figure out what could be the cause of that for her.
Wow, that speaks to something we said earlier, that there are a lot of different causes that can lead to epilepsy. And just because there's something that's, let's say, wrong on an MRI, or there's another diagnosis, such as hydrocephalus, which is having a lot of extra fluid in and around the brain, that may or may not be related to the seizures. And so that is one test, the MRI, to look at that, but there are other tests that can help identify whether or not that's related or if it's something completely separate.
Got it. Well, it's really important that we're having this conversation so people, and it's amazing that the different viewers who are watching and are being able to get their questions asked in real time. So thank you all for that. Speaking of, another viewer question just came in now. My producer just told me in my ear, and that question coming in says, do you need to depend on medication to stop the seizures from occurring for the rest of your life? I know Melanie says she tries other things. Dr. O'Toole, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a really great question. I think it's important to ask, if you've been on seizures for a long time and your seizures have been under control, do you still need to be on it? And there is research that helps us to identify who's at risk of having a seizure if they stop their medication or not. There are calculators that doctors can use to give you an idea of the risk of having a seizure if you stop your medications. But generally speaking, I recommend to my patients that if you haven't had any seizures for 2 years on medication, that's an opportunity to talk to your doctor about whether or not you still need to be on it or not.
Got it. And we have another final question coming in, and you all can make it brief because you kind of touched on this earlier, but if someone sees unusual symptoms with someone they love, how do they, what should they do if they think it's epilepsy? How would they even start that conversation? I'm sure it might be a little awkward at first.
I would say if it was someone I loved and I saw symptoms that I think or thought could be epilepsy, I would just let them know, hey, certain things that you're doing don't seem like you. It seems like maybe you're not paying attention to me at some times, and maybe just to be safe, let's see a doctor and ask some questions. Just come to that person out of a place of love, hey, I'm concerned and I want to help you, and let's start with just your general doctor, I would think, or assume. You can start with just your general doctor and ask the question, hey, here are the things I'm seeing, here are the things my friends and family are saying to me, and this is the concern I might have, and just start by talking with your doctor.
Yeah, starting there. I really want to thank our panelists for joining us today to chat about this. This was such an important conversation. I also wanted to add, the walk is this Saturday, so you can join us at the Houston Zoo. I'm actually emceeing the Epilepsy Foundation Texas Walk this Saturday for the 4th year in a row, and we are so glad you all were able to join us. But thank you so much for joining us on KHOU 11 Plus. I'm Agochi Iloka. Until next time.